So this is a prime example of what happened to a lot, probably a majority of the papayas that we planted, that we neglected and didn't take care of properly. Isn't it gorgeous? Yep. Aloha everyone, I'm Paulina.
And I'm Mike.
We're off-grid Hawaii, and today's video is going to be about papayas and how we are growing them right now. But first of all, I wanted to give you guys a little update on life and our channel. So for me, I recently put in my 2 weeks for my zipline job, so I'm going to be devoting a little bit more time to making videos and being here now in the present rather than up in the air on the mountain. So the next video that we have planned will be a orchard tour, so property tour of the whole fruit orchard and food forest we have here. So that's going to be pretty awesome.
So a lot of you guys been requesting the farm tour. So in the comments, just tell us things you want to see that we're growing. Like a lot of you guys know what we're growing. Maybe some things interest you more than others. So write in the comments like, oh, we want to see your jackfruit, how that's doing, or like whatever. So with
Your
that.
mac nuts.
First thing we'd like to do is have a little bit of story time about the first time we planted papayas on the land here.
So it was 2016 and we moved into this land and started planting a lot of fruit trees because we were very fruitarian back then. One of our main staple fruits here was papaya. So we would find that we were buying papayas constantly from the farmers markets, and we ate a lot of papayas back then. So naturally we wanted the predominant food here to be grown to be papayas. So we went crazy and we planted 200 papaya trees, if not more.
The reason we chose papayas is because they're a year-round fruit, and they grow really quick, so it was going to be kind of like our staple along with bananas.
Yeah, so we spent like a full month planting, growing, and putting all these papayas throughout the whole property, and then we kind of just did that and hoped for the best. What turned out was that a lot of the trees grew, but we didn't really have good quality papayas because we weren't doing it right. We learned a lot of things from this. First off, that you don't need that many papaya trees to sustain your diet, even if you were fruitarian. If you take care of just the select amount of trees properly, they will produce an abundance of fruit for anybody that's eating 1,000 papayas a day or just like one every now and then.
Plus, you'll probably get sick of papayas if you're eating them every day.
So we have reduced the amount of papayas that we have on the property and increased the quality of these papayas for our own consumption and for possibly selling them to others.
So when we planted the 200 papayas, we basically sprouted a bunch in a tray and then put one, we spread them out over the whole property. One here, this big, this much dirt. Like you guys know, we have no soil here, and a lot of you guys probably don't have soil if you live here too. So just this amount of soil for a papaya is just not going to cut it. And so yeah, like some of them grew okay, a lot of them died, a lot of them didn't taste good because they didn't have the right nutrition around them. So we've completely changed our approach, and we treat them just like we would any other tree. We give them a lot of soil. Like we're making our own soil here with organic mulch and stuff, and it's really rich. And we give them, massive amounts now so that they can grow healthy and taste good.
The thing about papayas is that they are very heavy feeders. Like they will take it all. They'll take it all, and if they're not being fed, they're gonna look like shit and taste shitty.
Yeah. That's the last thing you want, is like a ton of papayas and none of them taste good, and the plants are just hanging on for dear life and getting funguses on them and stuff. So it's much better, we found, to concentrate your energy on, say, 10 papayas versus 200. So like take all that energy you would have spent on 200 and give that to 10, and you're going to be much happier with the results.
Yeah, and I would like to know that when this whole thing was happening, planting 200 papayas, I was telling Michael, we don't need this many papayas, Michael. We don't need them. And he was very stubborn, and we continued planting more and more papayas.
Yeah, I just felt like...
He thought that it was going to be worth it.
No, what I felt is that each papaya, I didn't want to kill any of them, so I just wanted to plant them all and give them all a chance.
Honestly, if you take a papaya, you scoop out all the seeds, throw them on the ground, they're all going to sprout.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing.
So this one here is probably our best papaya on the land, and it came up as a volunteer, meaning we didn't intentionally plant it. It just came up from the compost that we use. So I threw compost on this garden bed here, and it came up, and I was rearranging the garden bed at that time, so I was like, oh, let me just leave it. And then I left some of the other stuff that was coming up as well, like this pigeon pea, crotalaria. I actually planted this vetiver and this cassava, but this garden bed has sort of turned into like a guild instead of, you know, like just having one crop in here. Also have some oregano in here, so there's a whole bunch of different things growing in here. But the point is that this papaya is doing so good because of the rich soil that I've been accumulating here in this garden bed. Where are you going to stay?
So Michael, tell us. Michael.
What?
So how do you grow papayas?
What do you mean?
How do you grow them?
Oh, like specifically?
Yeah. How do you do it? How do you do it? Let's find out.
Caught me off guard. I think for that we want to move to a spot where I did intentionally plant them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Alright, so let's go over to a spot where we did intentionally plant them.
Okay.
So, to plant papayas, you're going to first want to find a really tasty fruit. I don't know that this is absolutely necessary, but we like to use the ones that taste good to replant them. So you're going to take all those seeds and you're going to put them into your pile of compost and cinder and stuff, like your really rich mix that you've dumped onto the ground. You know, I'd recommend like 3-4 wheelbarrows of just like good soil, like with compost and some cinder. You know, then you cover it with mulch like we did here, probably 2 wheelbarrows of mulch on top of that. And then you're just going to scatter all those seeds into this pile. And in about a couple weeks, you're going to notice them all start to sprout. They germinate very easily, and you know you'll get a very high rate of germination. So you'll have hundreds of seeds. And the idea then is to pick out the ones that are smaller and just keep the ones that seem to be stronger and growing good. And ideally, you'd keep like 3. You could do a little more if you want, but you'd actually space them out a little bit more than this. This one I started from something I had in a pot. That's why they're so close, but ideally I'd space like 3 of them, you know, a foot, at least a foot or 2 apart. That way they have room to grow and they don't start bending like this. You know, they can kind of grow straight up and not into each other. So after you have 3 of them like that, you're just going to wait until they produce flowers. And then when they produce flowers, you'll be able to identify them as male, female, or hermaphrodite. And at that point, you're just going to wait to see a hermaphrodite, maybe the first one or the best one, and you're going to cut the rest. You just want to keep 1 hermaphrodite. So as the papaya are growing, I like to mulch and fertilize them once every 2 months. You know, maybe 32 ounces of chicken manure pellets, Nutri-Rich that I like to use, and then maybe 1 or 2 wheelbarrows of mulch. And actually, just throughout their whole life, that's all I give them is that amount and mix and frequency. And that'll keep them tasting good. I've noticed if we slack off and don't fertilize them, the papayas start to taste like kind of bland, and you know, they won't be as good as if you were to add the mulch and the fertilizer. I'm starting to think that the mulch has more to do with them tasting good than the chicken manure, but I still like to add both. So papayas are very fast producers, and you should be able to see flowers and fruit within 6 months to a year, and you probably should be getting fruit that you can pick off within a year if you treat them right. It did take us longer when we first started because, like I said, we weren't treating them very good, and it did take like over a year before we saw fruit. Yeah, and then my neighbor, he brought me over his house to show me his papayas, and he's like, oh yeah, they're only 4 months old and they're just massive. And it was then that it clicked that I needed more fertile soil, and he was using like horse manure and lots of soil
Rabbit
and
pellets?
stuff. Yeah, and they also have rabbits, so they're probably putting rabbit poop on there too. And he actually is the one that told me that you need to have the 3 so that you can get the right sex, gender. But you're gonna come in here.
Good job.
Do the dance.
So this plant here, it hasn't produced fruits yet, so we're not sure what it's going to be, but from the looks of the flower, it looks like a hermaphrodite because it has this part here and then this part, so it's like the male and the female, and that can pollinate itself. So this is why these plants are best, because the fruits can just grow without needing pollination from a male or a hermaphrodite mix. So we'll see what this turns out to be. So people want to grow hermaphrodites not only because they can self-pollinate, but also the fruits are more desirable because there is more flesh to seed ratio. Usually in the female fruits that form, they tend to be rounder, and there's more of a hollow area in the center, which can either be kind of mostly empty or have a lot of seeds in it. So you get less fruit. The fruit is still very delicious. Like, I've had really good tasting female fruits, but there's less flesh, which, you know, sometimes can be a good thing if you're not trying to eat so much fruit and sugar. Okay, so right here we have some papayas that we planted a long time ago. This one is a female papaya. If you look at the fruits, you'll notice that they're more round, and the flowers kind of have like big blooming petals that open up. So this papaya here, this plant, we can only see female fruits on it, so it's a female papaya. It was able to get fruits because the hermaphrodite plants are able to get it pollinated. So these female plants have been able to be pollinated because they are surrounded by a lot of hermaphrodite plants. As far as we're concerned, we haven't seen any male plants in our orchard except for one that may possibly be a male. We're gonna wait to see what the flowers end up developing into, but they look pretty male so far. But yeah, because this plant is surrounded by hermaphrodites, it is able to be pollinated. But one really weird thing that's going on is that this other papaya here, this is actually a different variety. So what we mostly have are solo and strawberries. The one here that we have, it is an exotica.
We don't know either.
We think. So it came from exotica seeds, but it could have crossed with something, or we could be totally confused about it, but it's definitely not the same as a solo or a strawberry papaya that we have. They grow a little bit bigger and they taste a little bit different, more like a marital that you'd find at the stores. But these papayas, they have like the papaya shape, but there's one of them that just looks like a female papaya. It's round and it's on that same plant. So this just goes to show that nature, you know, there's no like set rules for anything that grows in nature. Like, things just get weird with plants and people and everything in the world. It's just how it is. Like, you think you know one thing about plants, and then the next thing you know is that actually plants can do really weird things, and so can humans and anything that's part of the natural world. All right, so this papaya here is the one that we think might be a male plant. This one grew as a volunteer in this little guild. So it's possible that it came out of a female seed and produced a male plant. So we think that it's male because the flowers look very kind of like slender. I know that once the male flowers like really get bigger, they're just kind of like a branch of flowers. Right now we're not quite at that stage, but we're gonna wait and see what happens. So this is how you find out what you got. It will either be a fruiting flower or it'll just be a male flower. So we're gonna wait and see. It might be a hermaphrodite or it might be a female. I don't think so, but it's probably a male.
It's definitely not a female.
Definitely not a female, but who knows?
In this crazy world.
In this crazy world, right? Yeah. So if you have plants that you're starting that you want to grow to produce fruit and you're not sure what you have yet, just always wait for the fruit to actually develop. So if you're not sure and you have put some effort into growing a plant and then it looks like it might be a male after all, just wait, because it might not be a male, it might be a hermaphrodite, but then again it might be a hermaphrodite. But either way, you have a plant that's alive. You can always start a new one. I feel like most plants, most seeds that you grow will end up being hermaphrodite seeds, so you'll have good luck getting some fruits soon. Trust me.
So one last thing I want to mention about papayas is that they just continue to grow straight up. So eventually they'll be 30 feet tall and you won't be able to pick them. So one thing you can do is stagger your plantings. So right next to this one, I've planted another one to replace it pretty much. So once this one starts producing fruit, then I'll just cut this one. This one has a couple left on it. It's not doing too bad, so we're gonna leave it here just to be able to harvest some fruit. But eventually it's gonna get too tall, and so I planted this one to replace it. The reason there's only one here is because it's a special variety and that's all I had. Otherwise there would be 3 like you've seen in the other examples.
Okay, so that is it for this video about papayas. I hope that you guys learned something, or I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And goodbye.
Well,
not so fast. All right, let's quickly wrap up what we discussed today. So, first of all, don't plant 200 papaya trees by just spreading seeds and hoping for the best. It's not gonna work.
yeah.
Second of all,
Make sure to use plenty of soil and good compost, rich materials when planting.
yes. And 3, make sure that you take care of the tree by feeding it lots and lots of nutrients and rich mulch and compost and all that good stuff so that it makes really nice, delicious fruit.
4, remember to leave at least 3 papayas spaced maybe a foot apart, just so you know you have the right gender,
Yes.
hermaphrodite.
The hermaphrodites will produce fruit. The females will produce fruit, but only if they get pollinated, and the males will not produce any fruit. So if you want fruits, you want hermaphrodites.
And you want the good fruits, hermaphrodites.
Hismaphrodites.
And then spacing, I recommend at least 8 feet apart between papayas if you're going to plant a bunch in one area.
And last but not least, that's it. Thank you.
Well, and then make sure to stagger them. So plant them maybe once a year, just so you always have papayas that are short enough to hand pick.
Yeah, usually one tree you'll have for like 1 year, and then it's not going to be accessible enough, or it just won't produce as much.
The lifespan of a papaya is usually 2-3 years before they get too tall, and you want to just chop them. So And one last thing, remember to comment what you want to see in our next video, the orchard tour.
Yes, but one more thing. That's it.
Bye, guys.